The galaxy had always been a battleground, but humanity had never been at its center, until now. The United Terran Federation, UTF, had spent centuries expanding, negotiating, and fighting for its place among the stars. Yet, for all their struggles, humanity remained an underdog in a universe filled with civilizations older and more powerful. That changed when the Zyra Collective arrived. The Zyra were an ancient race of conquerors, spreading their dominion across the Milky Way with brutal efficiency. Their empire was built on assimilation, species either submitted or were eradicated. When their war fleets crossed the borders of UTF space, their ultimatum was simple: surrender and become slaves, or resist and be annihilated. Humanity chose a third option. #######. The fall of Outpost Vega 9. The first attack came without warning. Outpost Vega 9, a deep space research station on the fringes of UTF territory, detected an anomaly in the void, something vast and unnatural, shifting beyond the stars. Seconds later, alarms screamed as space itself seemed to rip apart, unleashing a torrent of Zyra warships. The station's defenses activated immediately, but it was like throwing pebbles at a tsunami. Commander Ethan Voss, the station's commanding officer, watched in horror as the enemy fleet materialized in perfect, calculated formation. Their ships were unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, smooth, black as obsidian, and pulsing with eerie, violet energy. They moved with precision, firing plasma lances that tore through Vega 9's shields in an instant. "All hands to battle stations. We have to hold as long as possible," Voss roared, knowing full well that survival was impossible. Within minutes, the station's defenses collapsed, and boarding parties began storming the corridors. Zyra warriors, tall, multi-limbed creatures with chitinous armor and glowing, cybernetic enhancements, descended upon the human defenders like a plague. They moved with terrifying speed, cutting through resistance effortlessly. Despite the hopeless odds, the humans fought back. Marines sealed corridors, booby-trapped access points, and unleashed heavy weapons fire at the invaders. But it was all in vain. The Zyra had centuries of war experience, and their technology was beyond anything the UTF had. As the final explosion ripped through the station, Commander Voss transmitted one last message. "They're here. They're coming. Fight." #######. The Galactic Council's response. The fall of Vega 9 sent shockwaves through the UTF and the broader galactic community. The Council of Worlds, an alliance of alien species that had long dismissed humanity as reckless upstarts, convened in emergency session. "The Zyra have awoken," declared Supreme Speaker Tarlok of the Zelver Dominion, his reptilian eyes narrowing. "This is the end of the Terrans." "They won't survive," agreed High Chancellor Elora of the Venari, her sleek feline features betraying no emotion. "They should surrender." Only one voice opposed them. Ambassador Alastair Grant stood tall, his jaw clenched. "You're wrong." His voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "Humanity doesn't surrender. You all dismissed us as insignificant. Now, we'll show you what happens when you underestimate us." Laughter rippled through the council chambers, but Grant's eyes were filled with a fire none of them had seen before. #######Earth prepares for war. Back in UTF territory, the response to the Zyra invasion was immediate. Every shipyard went into overdrive, every factory churned out weapons, and every man and woman capable of fighting was conscripted. The fleet mobilized, thousands of warships forming up in defensive formations across human space. Admiral Cassandra Drake, the Supreme Commander of the UTF Navy, stood before her officers. "The Zyra think they can crush us the way they've crushed every species before us." She looked each of them in the eyes. "They don't know what they're dealing with. We don't break. We don't bow. And if they want our worlds, they'll have to fight for every inch of them." The room erupted in a cheer. The Zyra had made a mistake. They thought they were fighting just another species. They were about to learn what it meant to fight humans. The fall of Vega 9 sent shockwaves through the United Terran Federation, but fear was not the response. Fury was. Across human space, war production skyrocketed. Planetary governors imposed martial law, factories shifted to full wartime manufacturing, and shipyards that once took years to produce a single warship now turned them out in months. Humanity had always been good at one thing, adapting. And now, they were adapting to war. ###### The Battle of Epsilon Prime. The Zyra wasted no time pressing their advantage. Their fleet, a massive armada of biomechanical warships, surged deeper into UTF space, setting their sights on Epsilon Prime, a heavily populated colony world with over 10 billion humans. Admiral Cassandra Drake had expected this. She knew the Zyra would move to crush humanity's industrial worlds early. But what the invaders didn't know was that Earth had spent the last 50 years preparing for an existential war. As the Zyra fleet approached Epsilon Prime, they detected what appeared to be a defensive line of hastily assembled ships, older destroyers, outdated battlecruisers, and planetary defense stations. The Zyra, ever arrogant, assumed it would be another easy victory. They were wrong. ###### The trap. As the first Zyra warships entered firing range, humanity's defenders opened fire with everything they had. Railguns, plasma lances, and missile swarms filled the void. The initial clash was brutal, but predictable. The Zyra's superior shielding and tactics allowed them to absorb the attack and press forward. Then the real battle began. The seemingly disorganized human fleet suddenly split apart, revealing a second wave of ships lying in wait, modern UTF warships equipped with prototype energy weapons and experimental AI-assisted targeting systems. "Now," Admiral Drake ordered. The void itself seemed to tear apart as dozens of hidden capital ships decloaked. They had been lying in wait, concealed behind artificial distortions in space. Before the Zyra could react, humanity unleashed hell. The super-dreadnought UTS Titan fired its orbital mass driver, launching a hyperdense tungsten slug at near-relativistic speeds. The projectile punched through a Zyra battleship, reducing it to a spiraling wreck in seconds. UTF strike craft, designed for fast hit-and-run tactics, swarmed the enemy, unleashing coordinated bombing runs that exploited the Zyra's previously unchallenged formations. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Zyra found themselves outmaneuvered. ######### The tide turns. On the surface of Epsilon Prime, the battle raged just as fiercely. The Zyra had deployed ground forces, expecting another swift planetary conquest. What they found instead was an entrenched and ruthless defense. For decades, humanity had prepared for the possibility of planetary invasions. They had built bunker networks, underground rail systems, and autonomous artillery platforms designed to rain death upon any invading force. Zyra troops, expecting a simple extermination, found themselves trapped in brutal urban warfare. Snipers moved through the ruins, picking off high-ranking Zyra officers. EMP drones disabled enemy war machines before human soldiers emerged from the wreckage, firing armor-piercing rounds into the invaders. The UTF's experimental battle mechs, massive, AI-assisted war machines, stomped through the battlefield, tearing through Zyra forces with high-energy cannons and monomolecular blades. In one particularly vicious battle, a single human platoon held an entire city block for 3 days, using improvised traps and sheer willpower to hold off a numerically superior Zyra force. It was not the kind of war the Zyra were used to. They had expected fear. They had found only rage. ######### The aftermath. After 4 days of brutal fighting, the Zyra fleet broke. Humanity had successfully defended Epsilon Prime, and in doing so, had shattered the myth of Zyra invincibility. The UTF lost hundreds of ships and millions of soldiers, but they had dealt the Zyra their first real defeat in centuries. As the Zyra fleet retreated, humanity sent them a message, **** broadcasted on all frequencies, burned into their warship sensors, impossible to ignore, ****. It was 2 words. Keep coming. And the war was just beginning. The defeat at Epsilon Prime was an insult the Zyra Collective could not tolerate. For the first time in over 5,000 years, an inferior species had not only resisted assimilation but had driven them back. This was unacceptable. In the dark halls of the Zyra Overmind, the ruling council of the collective gathered. Pulsing organic constructs lined the chamber, feeding battle data directly into their biomechanical minds. The conclusion was unanimous. Humanity was a threat. And threats had to be exterminated. ****. ###. The Scourge Fleet rises. Deep in the heart of Zyra space, hive world Vaxis, stirred to life. Here, the Scourge fleets were bred, a terrifying force of living warships, engineered for one purpose: total annihilation. These were not the precision fleets that had struck Vega 9. These were not forces meant for conquest. These ships did not take prisoners. They did not demand surrender. ****. They consumed. Millions of Zyra warriors, bioengineered for planetary assault, were fused with exoskeletal armor and equipped with the deadliest energy weapons in the collective's arsenal. The plan was simple. 1. Send the Scourge fleet to an important human colony. 2. Reduce it to dust. 3. Make an example of them. Their target? New Geneva, a thriving UTF world with over 15 billion people, a major hub for industry, research, and military command. The message was clear: humanity had dared to wound the Zyra. Now, they would burn. ****. Humanity's desperate defense. Admiral Cassandra Drake, now hailed as the defender of Epsilon Prime, received the intelligence reports. The Zyra weren't just sending another invasion force. ****. This was a war of extermination. ****. The Scourge fleet was unstoppable in open battle. Humanity's warships, no matter how advanced, would be ripped apart in a head-on fight. Drake had only days before the fleet arrived. She had to think differently. The Black Sky Protocol. Drake convened a meeting of UTF High Command. The situation was grim. New Geneva's defenses were strong, but they were designed to withstand an invasion, not an apocalypse. That's when Admiral Kyle Rourke, commander of the UTF Special Warfare Division, leaned forward. "There's one option," he said. "But we've never used it on this scale." Drake met his eyes. "Black Sky?" Rourke nodded. Silence fell over the room. The Black Sky Protocol was humanity's last-ditch defensive strategy, ****, denying the enemy a world rather than letting it fall. ****. It meant turning New Geneva into a death trap. Drake didn't hesitate. Make it happen. The battle for New Geneva. When the Scourge fleet arrived, they expected another planetary invasion. Instead, they found a world wrapped in fire and steel. New Geneva's orbital platforms had been repurposed into massive kill zones, layered with automated plasma cannons and railgun emplacements. The atmosphere was flooded with electromagnetic interference, disrupting Zyra targeting systems. Cities had been emptied, their civilians evacuated underground, replaced with urban combat networks, automated turrets, and legions of mechs waiting in the ruins. Then, humanity did the unthinkable. As the first wave of Zyra warships entered low orbit, UTF engineers detonated hundreds of nuclear charges in the upper atmosphere, creating a planetary-scale EMP blast. Zyra ships lost shielding. Their biotech systems, part organic, part machine, glitched, screamed, and died. Then the real slaughter began. UTF warships, waiting in the upper stratosphere, descended like wolves, launching relentless counterstrikes. Orbital railguns fired at full capacity, each kinetic slug punching through multiple Zyra warships. The Scourge fleet, designed for offense, had never encountered a planet that fought back. Zyra ground troops, landing in the shattered cities, found not civilians, but soldiers, waiting. Urban warfare turned into pure chaos. UTF shock troopers deployed from underground tunnels, ambushing Zyra forces before disappearing back into the shadows. Heavy combat mechs, repurposed from industrial loaders, crushed Zyra warriors under multi-ton plating. Automated drone swarms harassed Zyra forces at every turn, jamming their communications and feeding human forces critical data. For 3 days, New Geneva became hell itself. The Zyra, so sure of their superiority, began to break. ###### The turning point. By day 4, the Zyra Scourge fleet was in disarray, their fleets were crippled, their ground forces decimated. That's when humanity delivered the final blow. A squadron of UTF stealth corvettes, hidden in the wreckage of Zyra warships, slipped behind enemy lines and launched a daring surgical strike at the Zyra flagship, the Ebon Maw. Commander Riley Cass, leading the assault, breached the enemy command bridge, fighting through hordes of Zyra warriors. With her last grenade, she detonated the ship's primary energy core. The Ebon Maw exploded in a blinding wave of energy, taking half the remaining Zyra fleet with it. ###### The aftermath. The surviving Zyra forces fled, their Scourge fleet broken beyond repair. New Geneva was scorched, its cities shattered, but humanity had won. As the last Zyra ship warped out of the system, Admiral Drake stood on the bridge of the UTS Titan, watching the wreckage. She sent one transmission to UTF High Command. New Geneva still stands. And across human space, hope turned into defiance. The war wasn't just about survival anymore. Humanity was winning. The destruction of the Scourge fleet and the victory at New Geneva had changed everything. Across the galaxy, the myth of Zyra invincibility had been shattered. For the first time in millennia, alien civilizations that had once cowered before the collective began to reconsider their place in the war. Some even dared to hope. But humanity knew better. The Zyra had suffered a humiliating defeat, but they weren't finished. They would return, and next time, they would be even deadlier. Admiral Cassandra Drake gathered the UTF High Command and spoke plainly. "We've survived their worst. Now it's time to go on the offensive. ###### Operation Black Dagger. Humanity had fought a defensive war up until now. Every victory had been about survival. But survival wasn't enough anymore. The UTF needed an edge, something that would take the fight directly to the Zyra before they could regroup. And intelligence reports provided exactly that. A single name, ***Zyra Prime****, the capital world of the collective. More than just a planet, Zyra Prime was the overmind seat of power, the nerve center that coordinated every military decision. Destroy it, and the collective's ability to wage war would fracture. The mission was impossible. A direct assault would be suicide. Zyra Prime was the most heavily fortified planet in the galaxy, protected by planetary shields, orbital defenses, and an armada of warships. So humanity wouldn't attack it. They would infiltrate it. ##### The Ghost Fleet. A single task force was assembled. Commander Riley Cass, the hero who had destroyed the Ebon Maw, would lead the mission. Lieutenant Orion Vex, an infiltration specialist with cybernetic enhancements, would provide silent entry into Zyra networks. Sergeant Lynn Darrow, a demolitions expert, was in charge of planting the bombs. And a team of hand-picked UTF Black Ops soldiers, trained for missions with no chance of survival. They would pilot the Ghost Fleet, a squadron of captured and modified Zyra vessels, stolen from the wreckage at New Geneva. Their objective: 1. Enter Zyra Prime's atmosphere undetected. 2. Infiltrate the Overmind's core citadel. 3. Plant an explosive payload that would cripple Zyra command structures. 4. Get out alive, if possible. ##### The descent into darkness. The infiltration began under the cover of deep space, with the Ghost Fleet slipping past Zyra patrols, their stolen ships broadcasting forged biosignatures to avoid detection. As they neared Zyra Prime, the sight was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. The planet was a monstrous hive world, its surface a tangled web of living structures, organic spires pulsating with energy. Above it, thousands of Zyra warships patrolled the void, their eerie violet lights glowing like watchful eyes. The team held their breath as their ships entered the atmosphere, descending through the planet's thick, storm-ridden clouds. Then, the first problem hit. "We're being scanned," Vex warned, his cybernetic implants flaring as Zyra security systems pinged their ships. Cass gritted her teeth. "How long until they notice we don't belong?" Vex's fingers danced over his interface. "Maybe 30 seconds. Too late." The alarm screamed through the comms. The deception had failed. ####### The assault begins. Zyra aerial drones descended like a swarm of locusts, their plasma fire ripping into the stolen ships. "Brace for impact," Cass shouted. The Ghost fleet plummeted, crash-landing in the lower sectors of the capital city. Metal screeched as hulls shattered against the alien architecture. Smoke. Fire. Chaos. But they were alive. With no time to regroup, the team moved fast, pushing through the twisting, biomechanical corridors of Zyra Prime. Every turn was a nightmare. The planet was alive. The walls pulsed like veins, and the air smelled of something wrong, a mix of decay and raw electricity. And then the Zyra came for them. ########. The fight through the hive. The first wave hit hard, **** tall, multi-limbed warriors with blade-like appendages ****, their bodies enhanced by cybernetic grafts. "Contact!" Lindaro shouted as the team opened fire. Railgun rounds and plasma bolts tore into the enemy, but the Zyra fought with inhuman speed. They adapted to every tactic, shifting, dodging, regenerating even as they were torn apart. The humans fought back with ruthless precision. Vex disabled security grids mid-firefight, sealing blast doors behind them to cut off reinforcements. Darrow lobbed electromagnetic charges, disrupting Zyra bioware, making them slow and vulnerable. Cass led from the front, her rifle cutting through the enemy like a storm of vengeance. They pushed forward, every step carved in blood and fire. ####### The heart of the Overmind. After hours of brutal combat, the team reached the Central Command Nexus, ****, a pulsating chamber of organic supercomputers ****, where the Overmind processed every battlefield decision in real time. "This is it," Cass said. "Plant the charges." Darrow got to work, setting antimatter explosives along the primary bioconduits. But just as they were about to leave, Vex's eyes widened in horror. "Something's wrong." The walls shuddered. The air grew heavy. A voice, not spoken, but felt, ****, invaded their minds, ****. "You are not welcome." The Overmind was aware. And it was coming for them. #######, escape, or die. The chamber came alive, tentacle-like appendages lashed out, ripping soldiers from the ground, crushing them like insects. The Overmind itself descended from the ceiling, its form a grotesque fusion of synthetic and organic horror, its many eyes glowing with the knowledge of 1,000 conquered species. Cass raised her weapon. "We're leaving. Now." The charges were set. The countdown had begun. Now they just had to survive long enough to escape. T-300 seconds. The countdown had begun. The antimatter charges planted within the Overmind's core would detonate in 5 minutes, unleashing a cataclysmic explosion that would cripple the Zyra's ability to command their forces. If the team could escape in time. ####### The Overmind's awakening. The chamber shook violently, alien walls writhing like a living nightmare. The Overmind was fully awake now, its enormous biomechanical form descending from the ceiling, tendrils dripping with raw energy. "Intruders," it boomed, its voice not in the air, but in their very minds. "Defilers. You will be consumed." Cass felt it, the Overmind wasn't just speaking. It was pushing into her thoughts, trying to crush her will, to rewrite her mind like it had done to 1,000 species before. She gritted her teeth and fought back. "Not today, you bastard." She raised her rifle and opened fire. Hashtag battle for survival. The Overmind's defenses activated instantly. From the walls, Zyra warrior forms burst forth, their biomechanical bodies screeching as they surged toward the intruders. Bladed appendages. Plasma-coated limbs. Eyes glowing with hive-mind fury, ***. The fight was pure chaos. Orion Vex dropped to one knee, his cybernetic implants flaring as he hacked into the Overmind's neural network. I can slow them down, but not for long. Lindaro fired a high-powered rail shot into a charging Zyra brute, blasting its head clean off, then lobbed a cluster of fusion grenades into the oncoming swarm. Explosions rocked the chamber. The remaining Black Ops soldiers fought like demons, outnumbered but not outmatched. Every inch of ground was paid for in blood and fire. Then, the Overmind lashed out. A massive energy pulse rippled through the chamber, sending the humans flying like ragdolls. Cass slammed into a wall, her visor cracking, blood filling her mouth. She barely had time to move before a Zyra warrior lunged at her, its scythe-like limbs slicing toward her throat. She dodged by millimeters, rolled, and plunged her combat knife into its eye socket. The creature screeched and collapsed. T-180 seconds. We have to move. Cass shouted, firing another burst into the oncoming horde. Vex, tell me you have something. Vex's eyes flashed blue, his neural uplink hijacking the Zyra's security grid. I found us an exit. South corridor, now. Hashtag the race against time. The team broke into a sprint, gunning down Zyra warriors as they ran, the Overmind's tentacles smashing into the walls behind them. Then, the entire hive trembled, The Overmind, realizing its death was imminent, sent out one final command. And the entire planet responded. Hashtag Zyra Prime goes to war. Across the surface of Zyra Prime, millions of warriors surged into motion, racing toward the intruders. Biotech defense turrets activated, firing organic energy bolts at any unidentified life form. Zyra warships in orbit rerouted all available forces, converging on the last known location of the human strike team. The entire planet was turning against them. And they were running out of time. T-90 seconds. As the team rushed through the hive corridors, the walls twisted, closing in on them. It's shifting the terrain. Vex shouted. It's trying to trap us. Not happening, Cass growled. Darrow, blow us a path. Lindaro, grinning despite the chaos, planted a row of high-yield charges. Fire in the hole. The explosion ripped through the hive wall, exposing an evacuation shaft leading straight to the surface. T-60 seconds. The team climbed into the shaft, using their mag boots to scale the vertical walls. Zyra drones pursued them, firing plasma bolts upward. Vex overloaded the security grid, causing electromagnetic surges that sent the drones crashing down. Cass and Darrow covered the rear, firing blindly as the Zyra closed in. T-30 seconds. They burst out of the shaft, emerging onto a landing pad high above the cityscape, overlooking the endless biomechanical spires of Zyra Prime. And waiting for them. The Nightshade, their stealth exfiltration ship, hovering just above the pad. The pilot's voice cracked over the comms. You're cutting it close. No kidding. Cass shouted. Get us the hell out of here. Hashtag the detonation. T-10 seconds. The Nightshade's rear hatch slammed open, and the team jumped aboard, just as plasma bolts rained down around them. The pilot punched the throttle, and the Nightshade shot skyward, burning through the atmosphere at maximum speed. Behind them. The Overmind screamed. Then. The charges detonated. Zyra Prime's command nexus erupted in a blinding wave of antimatter destruction. The explosion rippled outward, sending shockwaves tearing through the hive city. Entire towers collapsed, and Zyra warriors shrieked as their neural link to the Overmind severed violently. In orbit, Zyra warships panicked, breaking formation as their command structures imploded. The collective had never known disorder. Now, they were drowning in it. #Aftermath, humanity's greatest victory. As the Nightshade entered warp, the team watched through the viewport as Zyra Prime burned. Lynn Darrow exhaled. Holy hell. We actually did it. Vex collapsed against the wall, his cybernetic circuit smoking from overuse. Never, again. Cass simply stared at the chaos they had left behind. The unthinkable had happened. Humanity had struck at the heart of the Zyra collective and survived. Back on Earth, as the news spread, billions erupted in celebration. The war had changed forever. For the first time, the Zyra were not the hunters. They were the hunted. The destruction of Zyra Prime's Overmind Nexus had sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For the first time in history, the Zyra collective was fractured. Across the stars, countless subjugated species suddenly found their mental chains broken, their forced servitude severed by the Overmind's crippling blow. Some fled, retreating into the depths of space, desperate to reclaim their own destinies. Others fought back, taking up arms against their former Zyra overlords. But even in its wounded state, the collective was far from defeated. And now, it sought revenge. #The Gathering Storm. Admiral Cassandra Drake stood aboard the UTF flagship, Olympus, watching the latest war maps unfold before her. The Zyra, though momentarily weakened, had not collapsed. Instead, they had reorganized with terrifying efficiency. Thousands of Zyra war fleets were regrouping, their fractured minds adapting, their command structures rebuilding with alarming speed. And at the center of it all, a new Overmind was rising. Vex, still recovering from the cybernetic overload he suffered on Zyra Prime, grimaced as he analyzed the data. "They're evolving," he muttered. "Faster than we predicted. Their hive network is rebuilding itself. We barely slowed them down." Drake narrowed her eyes. "Then we hit them again before they're ready." But Vex shook his head. "No. They won't let us." His fingers danced over the holographic display, pulling up new data. "Because this time, they're coming for us." #The Wrath of the Zyra. At the edges of human-controlled space, something dark was moving. Survivors from border colonies sent frantic distress calls before they vanished without a trace. Recon probes returned only static, their signals snuffed out by an unknown force. Then came the first visual confirmation. A long-range scout ship, barely escaping with its life, transmitted a final image before being obliterated. The Zyra Armada had arrived. A fleet bigger than anything humanity had ever faced, dwarfing the forces that attacked New Geneva. The aliens had learned. They had adapted. This was not a mere counterattack. This was extermination. The battle for Sol begins. For all of human history, war had been waged on other planets, in other systems. But now, for the first time, the fight was coming home. The Zyra Armada bypassed outer defenses with ruthless precision, cutting through UTF strongholds like a scalpel through flesh. Every retreating human fleet carried the same message. The Zyra are heading straight for Earth. The final stand would be fought in Sol itself. The defense of Earth. As the Zyra Armada entered the Sol system, humanity gathered every ship, every soldier, every weapon for one last stand. Earth's orbital defenses, the most advanced fortifications in known space, were activated. Massive planetary shields hummed to life. Orbital battle stations locked onto approaching targets. The UTF deployed its last reserve fleets, knowing that if Earth fell, humanity was finished. And then, the Zyra attacked. It was unlike any battle before. From the void, organic battleships rained bioplasma, melting through steel and titanium like paper. Massive boarding pods crashed into space stations, Zyra shock troops pouring out like a tide of living nightmares. The UTF fought back with everything they had. Railguns roared, tearing Zyra ships apart. Mech divisions deployed on the moon, engaging enemy landing forces. Nuclear warheads were fired into the swarm, causing massive detonations. The void burned. But no matter how many Zyra ships fell, more kept coming. ###### The fall of Mars. While Earth's defenses held, the war took a darker turn on Mars. The UTF's largest colony, the red jewel of humanity's expansion, was caught in the crossfire. Hundreds of Zyra drop pods pierced the Martian atmosphere, unleashing swarms of bio-warriors upon the cities of Olympus Mons and Hellas Basin. The Martian Defense Force fought bravely, deploying Titan-class war mechs to hold the Zyra back. But it was not enough. The Zyra's new overmind had learned from its mistakes. This time, it wasn't just sending warriors. It was assimilating. Cities fell silent as Zyra bioforms infected entire populations, turning civilians into unwilling drones. Martian Command sent one final message before being overrun. Mars is lost. Do not attempt rescue. Save Earth. And then, ***silence, ****. #### The darkest hour. On the Olympus, Cass, Darrow, and Vex stood alongside Admiral Drake, watching the horror unfold. Darrow clenched her fists. We should have seen this coming. Vex exhaled slowly, his cybernetic eyes scanning the latest reports. We might still have a chance. But we need to hit them at the source. Drake turned to him sharply. The new overmind? Vex nodded. It's not just adapting, it's centralizing. The Zyra never needed multiple overminds before, but after we destroyed the first one, they're focusing everything into a single entity. A new core. Cass's eyes narrowed. Then we take it out. Drake folded her arms. We don't even know where it is. But Vex smirked. I do. He pulled up a set of encrypted coordinates. Intercepted from a Zyra fleet transmission. It's in the Omega Centauri cluster. A deep silence filled the room. The Omega Centauri cluster was deep in uncharted space, beyond anything humanity had explored. A place of ancient mysteries and forgotten horrors. If the Zyra were moving their overmind there, it meant one thing. They were preparing for something far worse than a simple invasion. ###### The final gamble. Drake's voice was grim. If we send a fleet, we leave Earth exposed. Cass clenched her fists. If we don't, we lose everything anyway. Drake considered for a long moment, then exhaled. You'll take the best we have. A strike team. No backup. No reinforcements. Darrow grinned. A suicide mission? My favorite kind. Drake locked eyes with them. If you fail, Earth burns. Cass nodded. Then we don't fail. And with that, humanity's last, desperate hope was set into motion. As Earth braced for the final battle, the strike team prepared to depart. Their mission? To find and kill the overmind, before it became unstoppable. Even if it meant never coming back. The strike team had only one chance. The Omega Centauri cluster, a place of cosmic mystery and danger, was the final bastion of the Zyra overmind. Deep within its nebulas and black holes, the new overmind was rebuilding, gathering power to wipe out humanity and any who dared defy the collective. The Nightshade carried the team on a journey beyond the known universe, crossing vast stretches of empty space. Dangerous anomalies, hostile alien species, and distorted gravity wells tested their resolve, but they held strong. They had no choice. Earth's fate depended on them. ######. The final assault begins. As the Nightshade entered the Omega Centauri cluster, the crew was greeted by the sight of the Overmind's fortress, a colossal, biomechanical citadel floating at the center of the cluster. It was a living, breathing structure, its walls pulsating with strange energy, its spires reaching toward the stars like a twisted monument to despair. Ready your weapons, Cass said, her voice cold and determined. This is it. No turning back. Vex worked frantically at his terminal. I've hacked their outer defense grid, but we'll have to fight our way in. They've got the Overmind's neural network connected to everything. If we take it out, the Zyra Central Command will crumble. Cass gave a short nod. Then we make sure that's exactly what happens. The Nightshade dropped out of hyperspace, and immediately, their scanners detected a massive fleet of Zyra warships emerging from the Citadel. It was too late to retreat, their only option was to push forward and destroy the Overmind, or risk losing everything. Brace for impact. Lin Darrow yelled, and the team barely had time to strap in before the ship was rocked by plasma fire. ###### The battle for the Overmind. The Zyra fleet descended on them like a swarm of locusts, the biotech ships brimming with hostile intent. The Nightshade's shields flickered as it dodged plasma blasts. We're going to have company. Orion Vex shouted, activating the ship's countermeasures. The Zyra ships closed in, firing relentlessly, trying to overwhelm the humans. Focus fire on that flagship. Cass barked. She had a plan. Lin Darrow fired the Nightshade's heavy cannons, blasting a hole in the flagship's hull. I've got a path. We're through. The team rushed out onto the Citadel's surface, a vast living landscape of tendrils and shifting walls. The air was thick with a strange, alien hum, the very ground beneath their boots seemed to pulse with Zyra energy. This place is a nightmare, Cass muttered as she looked around. Stay sharp. The team split up, making their way toward the central core of the Citadel. They could feel the Overmind's presence, like a weight pressing down on their minds, trying to break their wills. ###### The Overmind's power. Inside the Citadel's heart, they found the new Overmind. It was no longer a mere centralized brain like before. This was something more terrifying, a biomechanical entity, part machine, part living organism, a hulking monstrosity that was the culmination of millennia of Zyra engineering. It loomed over them, a colossal being, connected to the Citadel through thousands of neural tendrils. Its voice was not heard in the air, it was in their minds. You are too late, it said, its voice cold and terrifying. You cannot stop the collective. You will be consumed. Cass stood firm, staring up at the Overmind. Not today. She ordered the team to split up. Vex hacked into the Overmind's neural network, trying to disable its defensive systems. Meanwhile, Lin and the others planted explosives around the core, hoping to destabilize the neural pathways. The Overmind fought back, tendrils lashed out, and the air around them crackled with alien energy. A wave of mental force slammed into Cass, knocking her to the ground. She struggled to her feet, her mind dizzy, but her will was stronger. They couldn't afford to fall here. ######### The final strike. As Vex wrestled with the Overmind's defenses, Lin Darrow planted the final charge at the core. The explosive was set, ****, a direct hit would sever the Overmind from the rest of the Zyra network ****. It was their only shot. Now! Cass yelled. Vex sent a final command, sending a surge of energy into the Overmind's neural pathways. The Overmind screamed, its tendrils spasming wildly, its massive form writhing in pain. And then, the charge exploded. The Overmind's form collapsed as the neural tendrils disintegrated, severing the connection between the Zyra and their queen. The Citadel shuddered, its walls cracking, the very fabric of the Zyra collective unraveling. #######. Aftermath. The Zyra fleet stopped dead in space. Without the Overmind to guide them, the warships became lifeless, their systems malfunctioning. The Zyra were leaderless, their hive mind shattered. But the victory was not without cost. Cass and the strike team watched as the Citadel began to collapse. They barely escaped with their lives, boarding the Nightshade just as the Overmind's fortress erupted in a blinding explosion. Back on Earth, the news came through, the Zyra collective was in chaos, their forces disintegrating. Without the Overmind, their unity had been shattered. Humanity had won. But as Cass stared out at the stars, she knew this was just the beginning. The Zyra would never forget this defeat. The war was over. But the galaxy was far from safe. ####epilogue, A New Dawn. The humans returned to Earth as heroes, their names etched into history. The galaxy would always remember the day that humanity stood against the Zyra Collective, a force of will that no alien empire had ever anticipated. But the universe was vast. And now, with the Zyra in retreat, new threats loomed on the horizon. And humanity, having won the ultimate war, was ready for whatever came next.